having that soy sauce in there, but you don't have, like, it's not as strong. And it's sweeter, I think. But I don't know, I could just be describing the teriyaki that I make, which, you know, because I haven't had my dad's teriyaki in fucking billion years. So... Yeah, I am very passionate about math and the things that are directly in front of me at this exact moment. I don't really have any sustained interests aside from that. Like I enjoy the Might and Magic series, but like if I was really passionate about the Might and Magic series, I'd probably be modding the Might and Magic series, not just like streaming it periodically, you know? The thing that I find interesting about the Might and Magic series is, to a large degree, the things that I find interesting about other stuff. You know, I like the math. It's also nice to have something that I'm like fairly good at, because you know, like I'm also kind of like a chronic hobbyist in the sense of like I'm just doing a different thing constantly from what I've done before, which means that I'm always bad at everything. Like I'm never actually good at anything because that requires that you practice a thing. Imagine practicing, gross. But so it's nice to have like the one thing where I'm like, you know what, I'm actually pretty good at this. And I still enjoy it. Whereas like the other thing that I'm pretty good at is I'm pretty good at World of Warcraft, but I don't really have an interest in it. Like I really enjoy myself with it. So, you know, that's a skill that goes to waste. That's a skill that goes slightly to waste. But hey. I'm actually just going to pop down here. This seems like a good place to start picking up specters. Get them to us. Well, I will say that whether you think you're good at anything or not is mostly a self-image thing and has very little to do with how good you are at things. Like, that's mostly a self-talk thing. Because what does it even mean to be good at a thing? There was actually someone who I remember talking to at one point who was like, you know, who were basically like saying that they were bad at League of Legends or something, and they're like, you know, oh, you know, I'm bad at this and I need to, you know, like they had a lot like riding emotionally on being good at this one thing.
Let's leave it behind.
And it's like, your MMR puts you in the 99th percentile. Like, you're objectively good at this thing. And it's like, yeah, but I'm not the best in the world at this thing. And it's like, there's only one person in the world who's the best in the world. There's 5 billion people on this planet. Nobody is the best at a thing. You know? Like, So one thing that I do think is an issue with the way that the modern world connects people, which I think is generally a good thing, is there's a big transition that's happened to what counts as success and what counts as being good at a thing over time that I think is actually really unhealthy. Like, I don't think that it's super healthy that, like, in order to be considered, like, vaguely kind of successful on platforms like YouTube, you need to reach an audience that's larger than primetime TV to become moderately successful. Like, you have to beat Colbert to be considered okay as a YouTuber, right? And that's just accepted, right? Because if you look at the actual view counts on primetime TV, they're not great. You look at the view times on Markiplier. Markiplier is objectively more successful than almost any primetime television anywhere on Earth, right? And there's this association that we have with, like, what counts as successful, what counts as being good at things, what counts as this, that, or the other thing, I think has a very toxic element to it where, like, man, if you have 5 friends and you're better than most of them, you're good at that thing. You know what I mean? Like, you're good at it. And that's the standard that everyone in human history has ever held themselves to. And nowadays, people hold themselves to the standard of being, like, better than 99.9% of human beings on the planet. And it's like, well, don't do that. You can't compare yourself to 99.9% of people on the planet and expect to do well. That's not a problem with your skills. That's a problem with the metrics of success, right? That's a problem with the way that that's being done. We're gonna see if this is a 3. It's not. It's a 7, which is a 3, funnily enough. Okay, we got a 4. We got a 4. Let's see. Well, those are good things. That's a good thing to seek out.
Nice.
You know, most skill sets are just things that you learn how to do. You just, do the training and then you're going to be perfectly serviceable at that thing. The thing that's most important to getting good at things is literally just having an interest in becoming good and fixating on growth and not really paying attention to how good you are. Like, how good you are at a thing is completely irrelevant to becoming good at a thing. Becoming good at a thing is just doing the thing and enjoying doing the thing, preferably, because that'll make it easier to continue doing it. Where's this? Is there a switch for this or something? Oh, this is upstairs, probably. I'm a dope. Yeah. It's just a matter of being like, okay, I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to do it better every single time. And, like, if you have the mentality, because, like, I have the mentality of just never being good at things, of, like, from my perspective, I can't see goodness. Which sounds like a pretty dark place to be, and it absolutely can be. It can be a very dark place to not be able to see good things. But if you leverage that into an basically ideological dislike of the concept of considering things good, it can be fun. Because you can just go, okay, well, am I less bad at this today than I was a week ago? And then you go, I don't remember because I have a goldfish memory and I don't remember. But so it doesn't matter. But I did this thing and it's incorrect. How can I do this in a way that fixes that problem? That thing that I did incorrect, how can I make that not incorrect? How can I adjust the strategy? How can I adjust the implementation? How can I change things in such a way to make this thing that didn't work, not even necessarily didn't work, but wasn't correct? Because a lot of the time, when you succeed at a thing, you succeeded, but you didn't succeed because you did it correctly. You succeeded because you got lucky, right? And being able to recognize, like, okay, so I lucked into a success there. How can I, make that better? Or, barring that, if this success was too simple, how can I move the goalposts of what counts as success so that I fail? And you basically put yourself in a position where the means by which you fail, right, is the difference between, like, the different attempts. There is no attempt where you're like, oh yeah, I succeeded, because you just have set things up in such a way that that's not a realistic possibility. And that's kind of the way that I live my life, right? Like, my life, I live doing a bunch of things badly, continuously, and then people tell me that I've done something very well. And if I were to look at things, from an objective perspective, it's like, okay, yeah, I probably did fine here. But from, like, an internal emotional perspective, I know that I could have done better. The difference between the way that I handle that now and the way that I handled it when I was younger is that I recognize that it's actually not critically important that I ever be good at a thing. What matters is whether it's good enough to, accomplish my objectives, and my drive to do perfect is an extra thing. It's just a bonus. It's like, yes, this is the thing that makes me want to do the thing, is the drive for perfection. But I don't need to look back and go, oh, well, I failed to achieve perfection. It's because I obviously did. Everybody always fails to achieve perfection. So just don't look back. Don't look back. That's my thinking. Ignore the past.
Very weak.
Don't ignore the past. The past is important. But
it's useless.
Don't take a emotional
Let's leave it behind.
Like,
Ooh,
don't ascribe your current standards
this is nice.
to the person that you were yesterday, because that is a different person who
Worthless.
wasn't as cool as you are now.
Junk. Junk. Excellent.
That was a whole ass different person who wasn't as good as the person you are now. You can't hold them to the standard that you're holding yourself. That's my stance. So be kind to your former self, and when you're in the flow state, if you're like me, when you're trying to do the thing perfectly, when you're trying to do a thing, you're just like hyper fixated on that thing. You're not like self-conscious about the fact that you're fucking up. At the time, for me, it's, looking back and going, wow, that's cringe, right? Which is not useful. It's not useful. So. It is easy to create more catastrophic errors in trying to optimize a process. This is also true. There are disadvantages to trying to do a thing perfectly. Because, hey, you know, shoot for the moon, and if you miss, you're going to be moving for quite a long time, actually. It's bad. You don't land, actually. If you shoot for the moon and miss, you do not land. You're just going to keep going. So maybe pay attention to when it will be a catastrophic problem if you miss the moon. As someone who has thought a lot about immortality and what that means, and has actually, like, put thought into the idea of, if you're immortal and you get stuck in space, you're just drifting in space for millions of years, right? As someone who's put that thought into that particular thought, the idea of shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you'll land amongst the stars, is like, do you have any idea how far away those stars are? Do you have any idea how long it's going to take for you to land? If you get lucky, you'll hit the sun. Also, funnily enough, I'm pretty sure that escape velocity from Earth's gravity would not actually get you escape velocity from the sun. So you would probably not have orbital velocity either. So if you do shoot for the moon and miss, odds are you're going to hit the sun. Right? Like, if you miss the moon, you're either going to hit the Earth again, which is if you just didn't achieve, like, escape velocity, because hitting the moon doesn't require escape velocity, right? Because the moon is in an orbital trajectory around the Earth, so you don't, in theory, you don't need to go fast enough to hit escape velocity. So, shooting for the moon, you probably are just going to hit the Earth again, but if you don't hit the Earth, you're probably going to hit the sun, and if you don't hit either of those objects, you're going to hit something in between the Earth and the sun. And there's not very much in between those two things, right? There's only like a couple little planets, which I feel like you're very unlikely to hit either of those trajectories at the exact time that they're there. So, like, you're probably going to hit the sun. So, shoot for the moon. If you miss, you'll be back on Earth. Probably. Unless you shoot too hard, in which case you'll hit the sun. Probably. Unless you get lucky and hit a rocky body in between here and the sun. That's my advice about shooting.
The store is closed.
Well, the presumption is if you're immortal, then you don't need to breathe. Right? Like, the discomfort of not breathing is associated with the fact that you're dying. Right? Like, not breathing is a deadly condition to be under. So before you start actually causing damage to your body immediately goes into panic mode because, like, the, whatchamacallit?
Looking for a weapon?
It goes into panic mode because by the time you have started to feel any physical symptoms directly associated with the lack of oxygen, like, you're kind of already fucked. So the body immediately registers this. And if you were going to do something to make yourself immortal, you would really need to, you know, adjust for that shit, right? Like, you would need to adjust some of the panic responses to not turn on, because otherwise you're just kind of torturing yourself for no reason. Like, the idea of not needing to breathe, but having your body panic if you don't, is concerning.
Come back soon.
So canonically, I would say, if you look at the most, like, it's hard to say because most people's beliefs about heaven are, like, fully incompatible and incoherent with themselves. Like, they're internally contradictory. But I would say that the most common interpretation of heaven is the non-canon interpretation that basically everyone gets their own personal paradise, right? Which would mean that there's going to be someone out there who their heaven is just like hanging out at a Denny's with Danny DeVito, right? And so there's just like a simulacrum of Danny DeVito, and they're just chilling, talking to a fake Danny DeVito. And that's their version of heaven, right? So in that context, the answer would be yes. If you're looking at like more like rules as written, as opposed to rules as interpreted by people who want heaven to be a good time, it would be like an eldritch horror madness scape, like fucking King in Yellow shit, where everyone just spends their entire day worshipping an eldritch horror. Like that's what's written down. What's written down is you're put into a belief mill, like you would expect a god to create in Dungeons and Dragons, where the god's existence and power is tied fundamentally to the faith of the believers. That kind of like belief mill is, I believe, rules as written what heaven is supposed to be. So, but in terms of people's individual shit, like the way that people actually think about it, because nobody would be Christian if they actually believed in this shit. Well, not nobody, but very few people. It's not a great sell. It's like, yes, you'll be mind controlled into believing that it's good, actually, that you're just sitting on your knees in prayer all day for the rest of existence. Until God gets bored. Horrifying. Free will only exists as long as you're alive. I'm finishing my my Hokkaido butter rolls. I like how it says the original American recipe, but they're Hokkaido butter rolls. What country is this from? See, the thing is that Jesus was almost exclusively based. That's why they needed to retcon the whole religion, right? The Christianity doesn't really work very well if you don't add Jesus to it. Like, the Old Testament removes a bunch of the stuff from like the Jewish tradition that makes it less crazy, right? So like Judaism branches off into Christianity. The Christians remove all the stuff that made the religion make sense, and then added Jesus to, make the religion make sense again. The problem is that everything that Jesus said is directly incompatible with everything his dad says. But Jesus was pretty based. Like, if you read any of the New Testament shit, it's always pretty, like, based stuff. Like, oh, you should love thy neighbor. It's great stuff. Don't let the capitalists in the church. That seems like a great one. That seems like a great one, actually. Hey man, it's easier to get a camel through the head of the needle than it is for a rich man to go to heaven. That's a really, really based thing to say, actually. That's really based. That's real based. Look, the funny thing is that I actually don't know of any bad quotes from Jesus, right? Like, that's the thing about Christianity, is that it's like, if you look at the Old Testament shit, it's all like totally batshit, right? And then you look at the stuff from Jesus, and it's like, okay, this is actually way more based than your average Christian could possibly allow for. Right? Like, so fucking good. Like, the line about rich people is very funny because of the fact that, like, it's literally like a denouncement of the church that currently exists, because the people at the church, like, the structures of the church should be written differently. So, like, the people who should be running the church, the people who should be rich and powerful within the church, the people who have to handle the money, they should be young. Those should be young people, because they're less likely to die tomorrow. And the old people who are more likely to die, they need to be disempowered. They need to have their money, their wealth, their status taken away from them. They need to be disempowered, because unless you disempower them, they are going to hell. Jesus said it straight up. The thing is that you can't actually do it. You can't put the camel through the head of the needle. And then he goes, the miracle is that through God, this is allowed to happen. But the reason that it's allowed to happen is because a rich man giving up his wealth is the only way that he can get into heaven. That's why. A rich man isn't going to give up his wealth unless a supreme divine power is telling you, hey man, it's going to be bad for you if you don't. Like, that's the dynamic that is being established in that sentence. But what they do is they kind of warp it and go, oh yeah, it's just one of the miracles of Christ that I can be rich and powerful and use that wealth and power to whatever ends I want until the day I die, and I'll still go to heaven. And it's like, nope. Nope, actually incorrect. No, you actually needed to give up your wealth and power. That's actually how that's the thing that you needed to do, and you didn't do it, so GG, I guess. Anyway, so you could structure the religion in such a way that it optimizes for getting the clergy into heaven by basically empowering the youth and disempowering the elderly. And you don't have to treat the elderly badly. You don't. You shouldn't, because that would go against the other rules that you have. But what you need is the power center to be among the young people who are not likely to die tomorrow. And you also want to not get people killed while they are young. Like, you could have ended up with, like, a really very pacifist-oriented religion that was very fixated on, like, the social good. If not for the fact that, like, it's not like feudal nobles are going to allow an interpretation like that to exist. And in a world where the elderly hold power, they're not going to allow an interpretation that they're going to hell if they continue to retain that power as their... So, anyway, it's just interesting. I find that kind of stuff to be actually quite interesting about, like, if you were to believe a thing, what are the implications of that? And how would you structure... We have 2 Orgel Orbs? I'd forgotten that we had 2. That's awesome. And how you would structure things according to the rules and stuff that have been set by the thinger. So... But I don't, like, I am willing to engage with basically any sort of
This is
hypothetical.
perfect.
Not basically any. But I'm willing to engage with most hypotheticals, and I find religious dogma to be something that's interesting, and
Looking for a weapon?
imagining how annoying my life would be
Again?
Don't
if
touch
I
the
got
merchandise.
angry every time someone was religious in my presence. I don't have to imagine it because that was me when I was a teenager. It's a really shitty life, and there's no reason for it. There's absolutely no reason to be cringe like that. Okay, I think so. We need to go to Yellow Vessel Waters.
I suppose you'll be wanting salvage. I don't mind the rats.
Because like I'm fully atheist. Like it's like I'm not agnostic. I'm not like I'm not like, questioning, oh, is there this thing? It's like, no, there isn't, but I can engage in the hypothetical. Oh, that's I guess I should have copied those messages. Let's see.
Looks like this one's all right.
I got a bunch of errors on load save, but I wasn't loading a save. Luckily, I broke the game in a way that like didn't seem to matter. I wonder if the autosave got corrupted or something. Like, I might have entered too fast after. Yeah, I don't know what happened, but it doesn't seem to have caused a problem, so I'm not going to worry about it. I guess I should probably load the autosave. I'm going to load the autosave quick. I want to check if the autosave got corrupted. The autosave doesn't seem to be corrupted either. So it gave me 3 errors on load save, which is weird because I wasn't loading a save. It's certainly a good thing, because there aren't really that many Christians in the world.
No match for me.
You know? It's a fairly big religion, but, it's a really big world. It is a very, very big world. So I think that this is probably going to go mostly pretty smoothly. These are only level 200. How would not being big on the idea of hell be a zealot thing? Zealots use hell as a means to justify their... Like, Christianity without hell is... It doesn't have a lever other than hell to use as, like, a tool to, like, make their people do really insane shit, right? Like, the really crazy stuff people do, like if you look at like conversion therapy and stuff like that, like conversion therapy exists because parents are terrified that their child is going to burn in perpetual hellfire. Right? Like on a fundamental level, that's what causes that to be like an accepted thing, right? And they literally kill their kids in the process, right? Like there's so much crazy shit that they end up doing as a result of that. And if hell wasn't in the religion, you don't have the ability to do that. Like the zealotry is fundamentally tied into to hell worship. Now, it might make you a heretic to say you don't believe in hell, and that is just true. It does make you a heretic. That is definitely a heretical belief. But heretics are not necessarily zealots. Heretics are often not zealots. Right? Like, the heresy is, you know, kind of a big deal in Christianity. Even though basically, like, every Christian faith is, like, objectively a heresy of either itself or more directly, or Judaism, depending on, like, how direct you're talking. It's like, it's all like a Jewish heresy, right? And then, like, Judaism is what, like a Zoroastrian heresy or something like that? And then, like, Zoroastrianism is a heresy of whatever the hell came before Zoroastrianism. Like, all these monotheistic religions are just heresies of each other, right? Like, they're all tied into the same, like, this same, like, pathway that hasn't actually split that much. It's only split a few times successfully. Which makes sense, because monotheists tend to kill people who believe in a different religion. So, only the dominant heresy in a given region ever gets a chance to, like, propagate. But the yeah, they do love burning their heretics. It's less of a thing outside of the Abrahamics. And I don't even know if heresy is. I don't think heresy is even like a big thing in like Judaism. I think it's mostly just a Muslim and Christian thing. Honestly, like heresy is not a big deal outside of, because like the whole point of Judaism is that you argue with God, right? Like arguing with God seems like the primary like selling point of the religion is that you get to argue with a god. That sounds pretty cool, actually. Anytime I've heard Jewish people talk about their faith, that's the takeaway that I get. I remember I first heard that. It might have been. God, what's his name? Shit. This is super famous comedic director. Shit. How am I blanking on his name? He made Young Frankenstein. Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks might be where I got the initial, like, oh, okay, interesting. But also, like, since then I've, like, heard a bunch of, like, you know, stories about, like, Jewish folktales and stuff like that, where it's like, okay, well, so this really cool guy got into an intellectual debate with God. And after arguing with God for 3 days, he convinced God to do a thing. And I feel like in Christianity, you never argue with God. You're only allowed to argue with the devil. So like all of the cool like you know, and clever shit is tied up with, like, this, like, eternal battle of good versus evil that they're obsessed with. And so you don't get this, the good-hearted, the good-natured, just, like, yelling at God and stuff, but... Which I think that's the source of where, like, heresy comes from. Like, heresy as a concept, the idea that, like, you are worshipping God incorrectly, and that requires that we take punitive action against you. That concept of heresy as this, like, intrinsically evil thing, I don't know that anybody else does it that much. Like obviously, like little minor cults do it, right? But a lot of those minor cults are built off of Christianity anyway, right? Fundamentally, they're like taking like lines out of like Christian dogma. Because like even like in Hinduism, there's like a god that you're not allowed to build temples to, but that god has a temple. Like, he's got a temple. Someone made a temple to the god that you're not allowed to make temples to. And that's fine. It's fine, actually. It's like a major temple.
There's no room.
So I'm curious about that, because I'm curious whether that was like one of the key technological innovations of Christianity and Islam that allowed them to dominate with such a coherent, like, unified message. Because, like, one could argue that Judaism is the dominant religion in the world because everyone's a like what, like 70% of the world population or something like that. Maybe not 70, but it's above 50% of the world population is a member of a Jewish heresy, right? So, like, if the but also, like, even though the Christians are obsessed with heresy, none of them can agree on what heresy is, because none of them agree on what the book actually says. So hey, you know, I will say that, you know, according to the doctrine of the religion itself, they're not exactly doing their deity a disservice, you know? There is kind of like, they're not misrepresenting their deity by being a dick to everybody. Right? There was the whole killing everybody but one on the entire planet except one guy and his family thing. You know, the genocide of the human species that is in there, right? Like, because some people are assholes. You know, I feel like, to be clear, being a dick to people isn't exactly unrepresentative of what people should expect from what their god believes in. Especially in a religion that has, like, a paternal bias. Well, it's not about who wrote it, it's about what's canon, right? Like, if people don't accept the flood as, like, a component of their faith, then they're not realistically worshipping the same deity. The people who are being dicks to people, the Christians who are being dicks to people, they believe in the flood. They're not misrepresenting their position. They're representing the exact same values that are upheld in their holy text. right? Like, it's not a surprise that someone reads the Bible and then goes, oh, maybe it's a good idea to go over into a foreign land and murder everyone there. Like, it's explicitly considered a good thing by the text. That's rules as written. No interpretation required. And to say, and if the interpretation is, well, the Bible is wrong, then it's like, okay, well, if the Bible's wrong, then what parts are wrong and why these specific parts and not the rest of it? Right? Like, it's not... I will say, it ain't the Abrahamic God if it's not doing a genocide or two, or three, or a dozen. Like, you can't... It can't be the God of Abraham and also not be a genocidal maniac. Those are mutually conflicting things. You're definitely worshiping a different God if they have not done multiple genocides. Right? Just full on, right? Like, you can't separate the genocidal behaviors from any of the Abrahamic faiths. It's a fundamental component of, like, the entire Old Testament. So, and if you don't accept any of that happen, then, well, congrats, you're doing your own thing. That's just being spiritualist as opposed to being a Christian, right? Like, and you can associate it as the same divinity being, like, misrepresented by their mortal followers, but at that point you are fundamentally worshiping a different thing than the thing that is being worshipped by those mortal followers, right? Like, you know, if people say, I'm worshiping Jerry, and Jerry has done this, and this thing, and then you say, I'm also worshiping Jerry, and he's done none of those things, right? You're not worshiping the same person, right? Like, you have totally different religions. You're basing things off of a completely different entity, right? And through the cultural framework of monotheism, that can be hard to register. It's like, oh, but there's only one God. It's like, okay, there's the one God, but the one God that you're talking about is not the same one God that the Christians are talking about. They're obviously talking about a different person, right? They're just wrong, according to your view, about who exists. You believe a different person exists, right? Like, on a fundamental level, if you say that, like, nothing in the Bible is representative of reality, that's not Christianity at that point, right? Realistically. You can call your own new religion Christianity, but it's not, like, it's not meaningfully tied into it other than maybe some of the aesthetics, right? But the Bible is supposed to be a historical accounting of events. It's not an inspiration. It's supposed to be a history. It doesn't detail, like, inspirational quotes. It says, this person did this thing on this date. This person then followed that by doing this thing on this date. Then this person did this thing, then this person did this thing. If all of those things that the individual people did you consider to be fictional and not a representation of reality, or at the very least an allegory for reality, because some people have the interpretation that some of the stories in the Bible are literal things and others are allegorical, where a thing happened that the people who were interpreting it didn't have the capacity to understand. And so, because they didn't have the capacity to understand it, they wrote down something that was actually fairly complicated in, like, in a way that is, like, allegorical, because it's like they don't understand what the hell they're talking about, right? Like, it's in a similar fashion to the people who, like, talk about, like, who think that, like, biblical prophecy is real, and that, like, when people talk about the Firebird, they're talking about 9/11 because the people who wrote the book had no idea what a plane was, right? Like, stuff like that is fairly common, and I think that there's some justification in being able to like maintain that position. But like if it's not, but like it's pretty hard to be like, okay, well, what's the allegory for? Hey, my followers, you don't have enough land. I want you to go over, mass murder every man in the neighboring tribe, and then rape their women. That's what I want you to do. What the fuck could that possibly be an allegory for? That's not allegory, right? Like, what is it an allegory for? It's an allegory for mass murder, and it's an allegory for rape. Like, that's what... these are pretty direct concepts. They're not, like, metaphysical, right? So it's like... The issue that Christians run into is that fundamentally you can't simultaneously like Jesus and like his dad. Like, there's just no way, realistically, to think that Jesus is correct and think that his dad is correct, because the Old Testament and the New Testament are fundamentally incompatible documents. They cannot coexist in a coherent religion. Like, they just can't. You can't square that circle, because the dad that Jesus talks about is compassionate and nice and kind, and the guy that is being described is like a mass murderer, right? But you don't have to believe. You don't have to be a Christian to believe in a higher power or a Messiah. You don't even have to be a Christian to believe that Jesus is that Messiah, right? Like, realistically, if you throw out the Old Testament, right, and say, hey, you know, I think that Jesus had a lot of good ideas, and he is the representation of the divine, and this, that, and the other thing. You can construct a spiritualist understanding through that lens, right? That's a thing that can be done, right? And if one is to, like, kind of just like abandon the Old Testament, it's like, I mean, you should not be surprised that Christians follow their holy text, right? Like, that's what I'm saying, is that, like, you're surprised that Christians are doing the thing God told them to do in their book. And you might not believe that that's correct, but they do. They think that their God tells them to do genocide all the time. That's why Christians behave like they do, is because their God tells them to do it according to their holy text. And just because you don't believe their holy text doesn't mean that they don't, right? It is a rational behavior that is within the context of their religious understanding to go and murder people. That is not an incoherent comprehension or an incomplete comprehension of the Christian dogma. That's rules as written. That is the text. That's the thing. That's the basis of the religion. Especially because the religion is fundamentally a patriarchal one. Because the fact that the religion is patriarchal means that as a patriarchal religion, the father takes precedence over the son. Within the context of the Christian faith, the father's beliefs are superior to and take priority over the son's beliefs because of the fact that he is the father, he's not the son. And with a patriarchal religion, that's the nature of it. So it's good for people to, believe in their heresies, right? Like, I would much prefer someone believe in their own custom-built heresy of Christianity than believe in, like, what everybody else believes in, right? I shouldn't say what everyone else believes in, but, like, in the generally accepted tenets that are within the text, right? I'm very happy for people to ditch the Old Testament entirely, but I do think that it's disingenuous to think other Christians will, right? And I also think that in order to ditch the Old Testament, you have to ditch hell. But people are scared of hell because their God says that if they misbehave, they will be tortured eternally. That's actually not true. They get tortured for a long time, and then the world ends and hell ceases to exist, so they disappear and no longer exist, because hell is not actually eternal. So eternal life is only granted to Christians canonically, right? The only person who has an actual eternal soul is, I guess, God, because the souls of humans can be arbitrarily destroyed on the whims of the creator. So at some point the rules could be changed, at which point, like, the people in heaven could also lose their immortal souls, because they're not actually immortal, right? So that's the point. Yeah, I'm also I'm not, making judgment on any of the things that you believe or, say. The point that I'm mostly getting at is, like, the company that you keep in the labels that you assign to yourself has implications. And the people who you think are worshiping your God are often have more of an actual, like, religious backing, of a actual backing of text and, like, certainly institutional backing than the backing that you have. And that's not to say that they're correct, because they're wrong. To be clear, they are 100% wrong. The book is fiction. It was made up, right? It wasn't just written by people inspired by God. It's fiction. I'm an atheist. It's made up. However, to them, it's real. And because to them it's real, right? As someone who doesn't believe that the Bible is an actual representation of God's will, that actually puts you closer to me in terms of your relationship with Christians than it puts you to them. Because not in the sense of, like, oh, you're secretly an atheist or anything like that. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that you're coming from an outsider's perspective, right? You're not coming from a Christian perspective if you don't believe the Bible is real. You're coming from the perspective of an outsider. And unironically, you need to respect their religion. Like, they're not incorrect. They're not incorrect arbiters of their faith when they exemplify the things that their faith tells them to do. And that's all I mean by that, right? And there's plenty of people who they actually believe that their God repeatedly told people to do genocide and did his own genocide himself with the flood, right? They believe those things, and they also believe that this God is infinitely good and is incapable of making mistakes. And they are also decent human beings who treat everyone kindly. At the same time, they have the ability to simultaneously be a decent human being and worship a genocidal maniac. And I don't understand how people do that. It seems counterintuitive to me, but I don't really have to understand it. So, let's see. How are we doing here? Okay, got the floor down. From here it should be pretty simple. I just don't want to get pulled into the whole pack. We've got a couple of Ascension Emeralds here. But yeah, theology is a very interesting topic to me. Like, it's gotten very interesting as I get older because, like, I'm not surrounded by Christians anymore, so I don't have to deal with their bullshit. So, like, because I'm not surrounded by Christians and dealing with their bullshit all day anymore, like, I'm much more easily able to be chill about it than when I was a kid and I was constantly getting shat on for being an atheist. Like, I had, like, people in my high school who actually thought that being an atheist was being a satanist. Because the concept that someone could not believe in what to them was as solid and real as the material world was just, like, it didn't make sense to them. So they had to reinterpret it as something else. Because it's like, what do you mean you don't believe in, you know, I don't know, gravity? It's not that you don't believe in gravity. It's that you think gravity doesn't work according to, like, Newtonian principles. Is that it? Like, you think Newton's wrong, right? So, but gravity obviously exists because, like, it's the thing that holds us to the planet. And I remember in high school there were a lot of people who that was actually the way that they interacted with me, like, informing them that I was an atheist. Because it, like, just the concept of being, like, a non-Christian in that, you know, shithole little town, it wasn't even a position of hatred. It was a position of fundamental disconnect where it's like, it's like the robots in, like, in Westworld, where, like, they'll look at a thing that they're not allowed to look at, they'll see a thing they're not allowed to look at, and they just kind of just, like, go blank and go, that doesn't mean anything to me. And that whole line, I saw that so many times. Like, I saw that so many times as a kid. I didn't get a lot of hate, to be honest, for being a Christian, or for being an atheist. But what I did get was occasional hate for being, like, a demonologist, which I wasn't. Because people didn't actually comprehend that, like, there was such a thing as a non-believer, right? And it's just interesting. You shouldn't be look. You should not be sorry for other people's behavior. This is, like, full on. Like, if someone, you know, happens to share one category with you, you are not responsible for their behavior. Like, 100%, 100%. Do not apologize for other people's bad actions. I'm sharing what I think is a funny and interesting story about how, like, look, tell me you're Christian without telling me you're Christian. Hey, I despise most Christians. It's like, okay, you told me you were Christian already. You don't need to... I get it. Christians are a lot like leftists, in that nobody hates Christians like Christians do. And nobody hates leftists like other leftists do. Actually, that's not true. Fascists hate leftists even more than leftists do, but... That's... But yeah, anyway. So it was a very interesting dynamic growing up of just people being like, imagine being so sheltered that not only is the concept of other religions fully alien to you, but also the idea of non-religion, like that both of these concepts are things that, like, have to be framed through the context of, like, the specific religion that you have. And I guess a lot of people do that. There's an interesting thing that happens with Hindus, where a lot of Hindus, like, don't really get that monotheistic religions are incompatible with theirs. Like, they just don't get it, right? They've got their pantheon of gods, and they're like, okay, yeah, this is our gods. These are our gods. There can be other gods. And so one of the things is that, like, at some point, I'm trying to remember. I think it was, like, I think it was this. I think it was the sister. Basically, like, when she had her shit. She had one kid. She had, I think, the son, and then she was like, oh, great, we have, a son. I'd like to also have a daughter. And so she went around and prayed to, for the next kid to be a daughter to all the random temples. And one of the places that she went to, like, the mosques, and she went to the Christian churches to just go, hey, I'm also thinking of you, hey, Jesus, hey, I'm reaching out to you too, right? And that's an interesting element of, the same kind of phenomenon of being unable to, like, process the concept of, like, other religions on a deep level. Because again, these are monotheistic religions. They can't exist at the same time and also be correct, right? Like, though actually that's not entirely true. Christianity is not exactly a monotheistic religion. Christianity is intrinsically... There's an intrinsic presumption of polytheism built into the Old Testament that gets mostly ignored. But if you look at some of the wording in the Old Testament, it actually does imply that there are other gods, actually. So Christianity didn't come from a purely monotheistic position, or Judaism, I guess, because it's Old Testament. Well, like, it didn't come from a purely monotheistic position. It comes from a fundamentally polytheistic core that then, like, is still there but kind of gets ignored. The wording of certain things, like, I am the one true God and you shall have no other gods before me, that implies the existence of other gods, right? Like implicitly within that statement is there are other gods and I'm before them. I come first, right? So, and you could say, oh, well, it says one true God. And it's like, yeah, true as in correct and righteous, right? Like, that's what true would mean in that context. It's not the one real God, it's I am the one true God. Right? I am the correct deity for you to worship. So even within the context of the monotheistic religions, you can see their polytheistic roots very strongly come into play. Obviously, like, the devil, classically, has very deity vibes to it. There's also the elements of, the fundamental contradictions tied up with, like, having an entity who is omnipotent and omniscient but keeps fucking up. Right? Like, the devil doesn't have free will. Free will is a thing that was only granted to humans, so why did the devil rebel? Right, the devil doesn't have free will. So if the devil doesn't have free will, but the devil rebelled because God told him to. The devil was designed for the purpose, the function of rebelling. Right? That is the function that the devil serves within the metacosmos. And I believe that's pretty much just kind of canon, right? Because angels don't have free will. Like, that's a human thing, I think. That might be more of like a pop culture humanity thing than anything else, the idea that angels don't have free will, but I think that is kind of core to what makes humans humans, right?
There's no room.
Well, I agree. I agree with that. I don't have any objection to that. Actually, I don't really agree with that very much. I actually do not agree that religion tends to help people. becoming religious in a society where religion is the only way to gain purpose, because religion has a monopoly on truth that they have created through violence and oppression. It's true that as an individual, especially in a modern capitalist economy, religion serves a unique function that can be helpful to an individual. But the reason that it's serving that function is not because before religion this function wasn't served. It's because religions violently oppressed anybody who tried to serve it, and still do suppress people who tried to serve a similar function in people's lives, and actively make it harder to access the things that they have a monopoly on. Right? Like, how many churches tell people, you don't need mental health care? It's a lot of them. It's a lot of them. A lot of people are members of religions that actively tell them not to get therapy. Right? A lot of people are members of religions that actively, you know, just flat out murder them, to be clear. Like, the fact that an individual can benefit from conversion is not surprising when you're converting to the thing that society is violently trying to force you into. Right? It's not really a selling point of the thing, it's a selling point of, yeah, if someone's violently trying to get you to conform, conforming tends to help your mental state. You know? That's a... You know? So here's a thing to understand about me. I reserve my animus for institutions. I don't think that institutions are bad because they're full of bad people. Because I don't really honestly believe that much in the concept of bad people. I actually don't. And that's not to say that I think that people are good, in the sense of, like, that Nazi is just misunderstood, and, if we could just, if we could make them understand that what they're doing hurts people, then, like, we could then, because nobody wants to hurt people, if we just convince the Nazi that what they're doing is bad, then they'll stop doing it. And that's naive, and that's not what I'm talking about when I said I believe in the concept of good or bad people. There's plenty of people who legitimately are really way too far gone and are, hold ideological beliefs and destructive tendencies that I don't know if you can fix. And I don't have an objection to trying, like on an institutional level, but it doesn't mean that, like, I think that all these people are just, like, one good conversation away from having better beliefs. But just because a structure is bad doesn't mean that the people involved in that structure in any way are necessarily bad, right? Like, there's a lot of really huge problems with, like, a lot of charities. As an example, a lot of charities are really bad. Like, they do a lot of bad stuff. This isn't all charities, but a surprising number of charities do really, really bad shit with the money that they're given. But the bulk of the people who are in that charity and who are actively working for that charity have no idea the bad shit that the charities do, right? That the charities do, right? And similarly, when it comes to things like, when it comes to, like, religions, when it comes to capitalism, right? Like, the existence of capitalists is bad. I don't hate I don't hate capitalists interpersonally, right? Like, I don't hate people who own capital as a matter of course. That's an insane position to hold. The person is not their title. They are a person. And whether you like or dislike them should be according to the things that they do, not according to, like, arbitrary, cultural labels, right? So, like, if we go back to, like, the context of a Nazi, like, yeah, a Nazi, you can pretty much say, yeah, I hate all Nazis. Interpersonally, Nazis are bad people. Because a Nazi is a person who is interpersonally interested in some crazy heinous shit. They want incredibly bad things to happen to people in the real world. They're actual things that they want to do and that they push for are bad. And you can dislike them for that, right? But when it comes to, like, particularly, like, religious stuff, like, I'm gonna be, like, kind of frank, like, basically nobody believes what they say they believe, and nobody believes what they think they believe. Not really. There's a really big difference between ideologies that take place in the real world and ideologies that only exist in your head, right? Like, every Christian couldn't come up with their own concept of their deity if not for the fact that there's no consequence to the real world for their beliefs. Like, realistically, it doesn't matter what a Christian thinks that their deity wants at all. There's no real world consequence. Even the ones, as I said, even the ones who think that their God is a genocidal maniac and is also the avatar of all goodness in this world. Even those people, it's not real to them. Some of those people are, when it comes to their real life, interpersonally behave in that way and politically behave in that way. Like, in the way that they interact with the real world. Some of the people who believe these things about their God actually act on it. But a lot of the people who believe the Old Testament is a literal recounting of reality also think that hate is bad. And you shouldn't hate people. And that's true for everyone of every religion. And the thing here is that I don't think that any individual religion is intrinsically, like, that much worse than others in terms of the individual people who follow that religion. Because, like, the Southern Baptists are mostly probably victims, as an example, right? Like, isn't the Southern Baptist Church like a groomer cult or something? It's like, you know these women that you see in the old-timey outfits? Yeah. What do you think their life is like back at the compound? Do you think they're allowed to have an opinion? Right? Like, the individual people who are followers of these religions are not responsible for the fact that the religion is oppressing them and everyone else, right? Like, it's not their fault, including the people in power within those in those things. But the people in power, the people who have positions of power within those religions, they are responsible for their own behaviors. And since they do have power, the only moral thing that they could do is cede that power or renounce their faith. Right? So there are people for whom they have a individual responsibility to renounce their faith, because their faith is telling them personally to do horrible things to people, right? And that's a far cry from, like, the people who are locked in cages until it's time for them to do a show of force, and they shuttle everyone onto a van and they see the outside world for the first time in 6 months. Like, that's the thing, right? Is that, like, the vast majority of people that are a member of a cult are explicitly victims of that cult. And they're often really, really garbage human beings who have really bad ideas about the world, right? But also, like, what do you expect? Like, they've been, like... They didn't have control over how they grew up. And sometimes you can... Sometimes you can take people who grew up in those environments and who internalized those terrible beliefs, and you can get through to them because they were... And it's easier when they were someone who was like explicitly a victim of it, as opposed to the people who were in power within the organization. The people who are in power in any given organization, this is true both politically. This is true for both political and religious institutions, by the way. People in positions of power are more griftery than their flock. The flock is always more religious, is always more ideologically pure than the leadership. The leadership are mostly grifters. So, like, a person who runs one of these weird cults is a very, very different type of person than the person who is in the cult but not running it. Right? Baptists are Protestants and so are Mormons. What are you talking about? The Protestants are everybody that isn't an Orthodox or Catholic. The Protestants are everybody who broke away from the Catholic Church. And the Catholics are the people who broke away from the Church. Right? That's when the Bishop of Rome made his power grab, right? So when the Bishop of Rome made his power grab, that divided Christianity because the Pentarchy was broken, basically, right? And so, like, the Catholics worship basically one bishop as, like, the living embodiment of God, which is kind of a weird dynamic. Whereas, like, you had bishoprics before that shared power. Anyway. But yeah, Protestants are like everybody. Everybody's a Protestant. That's not true. There's a lot of Catholics in the world. Catholicism got spread to a pretty huge amount of the world by the Spanish. Well, the Mormons can't break away from Protestantism. Protestantism isn't a religion. Protestants are every one of the heresies that broke off from the Catholics. They're all Protestants. Like, Lutherans are Protestants, right? Like, they're all Protestants. The thing that makes them Protestants is the fact that they broke off of the Catholic Church. Like, you can't break off of Protestantism because it describes your relationship to the Catholic Church. Protestants, there was never a Protestant church. I mean, people make churches that they call Protestant, but the reason that they call them Protestant churches is because they're trying to be, like, non-denominational, like, whatchamacallit. They're trying to be, like, non-denominational things that anyone from the 6 religions in this tiny town can all go to the same church. But yeah, like, whether you're, like, a Lutheran or a Baptist or a this or a that or, like, a, you know, whatever... I don't remember all of the... I remember the Lutherans because there were a lot of Lutherans in the town I grew up in. But, like... but there's, like, a lot. There's, like... Is there Calvinists? Is Calvinists a thing? I think there's Calvinists. Obviously, the Anglicans. Like, even the Anglicans are Protestant. Right? And they're, like, very distinctly their own thing, right? The Anglicans are still a Protestant religion. So... Anyway, it's important to, like, remember that, like, the historical... Oh, wow. These things teleporting in front of me is going to be a problem. Luckily, we ended up being fine, I think. Yeah, you don't need to apologize. If I am being nitty-gritty about like some mechanical detail, bear in mind that there's always the possibility that I'm misremembering something. But also, like, I'm not attempting to make you feel bad for not having played enough Europa Universalis to take an interest in like the Protestant Reformation on like a technical cultural level, and how like the like whatchamacallit, how like the various like breakings of the churches and like the fucking anti-popes, and you know, do you know about anti-popes? If one person in chat asks me about anti-popes, I will go on a long rant about anti-popes, because it's such an interesting idea. Not a real problem that you have with the Orthodox, but it's a problem that you... But that's the thing, right? So did the King James Bible is a different Bible than the other ones, right? Like, people have been adding and removing from the Bible for quite a while, and a lot of it is just like translational stuff. But I mean, the church did pick and choose which writings they were going to keep in their Bible, right? Which particular writings made the cut. Yeah, I don't think that someone adding their own book makes them not Protestant. I don't agree with that interpretation at all. Like, unless they did something fundamental to, like, change the nature of the religion, which I don't think that any of, like, the weird, like, localized cults do. Yeah, I mean, polygamy isn't... that's not an abnormal thing for Christians. It's an abnormal thing for Christians today. I don't think monogamy is built into the Bible anywhere, is it? Is that even in the New Testament? I don't even know that it's in the New Testament. Oh, we made a boo-boo. Oh, we made a big boo-boo, actually. Can I get the elementals to come up? Yes, I can. Okay, so we can at the very least get the twisters out of the basement. And we're unfortunately going to have to jump down on top of the others. Yeah, from my perspective, in order for someone to not be a Protestant, they would have to stop being Christian entirely. In order to stop being Christian entirely, they kind of have to abandon Jesus conceptually, right? They'd have to drop the Jesus aspect of the religion in order to bypass being Christian. Because the same isn't true for, like, I wouldn't consider all Protestants to be Catholic, as an example. But the reason for that is that the Catholic Church is a centralized power structure that has, like, very specific meaning to it dogmatically. And what the meaning means dogmatically is obviously different depending on the period of history you're in, this, that, or the other thing. But in order to be a Catholic, you have to actually, like, as an example, believe in the Pope, right? If you don't accept the Pope as the head of your religion, as the singular head of your religion, you're not Catholic, right? Like, that's fundamental to Catholicism. There isn't anything like that with Protestantism. Protestantism is any Protestant, is any Christian who has their faith derived off of the fundamental break-off during the Protestant Reformation, when basically half of the Christians in the world rebelled against the Catholic Church, right? So, like, the schism, if the schism was the defining element that makes Catholicism what it is, if Catholicism was, like, just its own thing, if Catholicism was, like, a diversity of religions, as opposed to being a singular structure with a singular head of the religion, then you can make the argument that, you know, Protestants are still Catholic. But that's not the case. So Protestantism is a heresy of Catholicism, right? It is a divergence of the dogmatic standards of the Catholic faith. That's what. So like Protestantism is a heresy of Catholicism, but it's not still Catholicism. Protestantism can't have heresies because Protestantism doesn't mean anything. It just means that you're a Christian who is part of the break-off from the Catholics. So, like, no matter how many times it fractures, right? There's no such thing as a typical Protestant. You think that the Anglicans have the King of England as their pope. They've created a new pope, and it's the King of England. I think that the Anglicans are like American Protestants? Like, no. Anglicans are not like American Protestants. At all. They're both Christians. They have some similarities, but like, you know, the American versions of Protestantism, some of them do create their own cult. Like, some of them do create their own pope. That is a thing. Like, some of them do create their own pope, right? But like, yeah. I know all about... See, the thing is that you think I don't know Mormons. I know about Mormonism. I'm familiar with it. It's just that I'm not culturally incentivized to think that the rest of the Christians are really that different. You know, Christians do, like, ritual cannibalism, right? Like, this is, like, a thing they do on the reg. Like, I'm not surprised by magic underwear. Like, from the ritual cannibal religion. Like, you have to think of it from like an outsider perspective. And it's like, you know, like hearing a person, you know, going like, you know, oh man, you know, it's very normal that, you know. Now, to be fair, I will say, most Protestants don't believe in the transubstantiation thing. I think it's transubstantiation, which is the belief that the wine and bread literally transform into blood and flesh when you do communion. That is a Catholic belief that I don't think most Protestants still adhere to, right? It doesn't make a mechanical difference, really, right? But whether the ritual cannibalism is internally understood to be real or meant to be an allegory for cannibalism doesn't make it any, like, less weird. And I do think that that's, like, the weirdest thing that Christians do generally, is that, like, in terms of, like, weird beliefs, the ritual cannibalism thing is definitely up there. It's definitely up there. It's not like one of their most damaging, like, beliefs, to be clear. I'm not talking about, like, damaging. I'm just talking about, like, oh, your religion does what now? Oh, so see, there was this guy, and we consider him to be the Son of God. So what we do is, we get together every Sunday, and we devour his flesh in a ritual to bring ourselves closer to him. And it's like, you're kidding, right? That's not... You're making a joke? No. We actually literally believe that it's his flesh, actually. It's this thing called transubstantiation. It's one of the miracles of communion, actually, that this bread and wine physically transform into flesh and blood. So yeah, like, the fact that Mormons are weird is not a thing that... It's a thing that's very funny, but it's not a thing that makes them not Protestant. Right? Like, being weird doesn't make you not Protestant. Just like the prosperity gospel people, right? Like, prosperity gospel they're still Protestants. Even though, like, prosperity gospel, like, just legitimately just flies in the face of everything that Jesus has ever said, right? Like, the whole prosperity gospel thing is a crazy thing, right? Woo! So, like, god damn it, I got one shot. Okay, so I do get one shot by those, unfortunately. I just lost so much progress. Ugh, that's Okay. Do we want to do that first? That was after I fell in, too, right? Did I save after that point? I don't think I did. Oh, man. How much progress have I lost? Oh, my God. Oh, no. Oh, my God. I lost so much progress. Oh, jeez. Yeah, falling into that pit was a big problem. I forgot that I had fallen in and hadn't saved in a million years. Oh, that's rough. So Ulrin can be one-shot by the bosses. This is the thing that I have to bear in mind when I'm doing stuff. There's a boss here, so I have to be a bit more careful than I'd like to have to be, but that's okay. But one of the things that I do think is very funny, actually, if you see a lot of, like, horror that's made by, like, Christians and, like, Christian cultures, one of the things that I think is most interesting about it is that if you look at, like, if you look at what the demonologists are doing, like, whether, like, if you look at what the devil worshippers are doing in a given, like, horror movie, they're usually just doing normal Christian shit. Like, they're just doing stuff that's like, wait, this is just a thing that you do. This is, like, your religion. Like, and it's very hard to unsee that once it begins. Like, particularly, like, if you think about, like, Lovecraft and Lovecraftian stuff, like, all the spooky shit in Lovecraft is, like, straight out of the Bible. I think that interpreting Jesus as a priest would be a mistake. I don't know if I'd go with Paladin. I think I would say Favored Soul. Favored Soul is the class that I would give to Jesus. So, Priest is definitely wrong for a few reasons. The first of which being that, like, yeah, I think Favored Soul, 100%. No question. 100% Favored Soul. I am solidly locked in. It's definitely Favored Soul. So the thing about Jesus is that Jesus' magic set doesn't come... You could argue Sorcerer. But how could one not enjoy, like, talking about esoteric details of history and, like, how can one be even interested in fantasy and not be interested in the schism between the Catholic, between the Christian Church that led to the dissolution of the Pentarchy, and except it wasn't quite dissolved, and then, like, you have this weird thing where, like, the Pope is simultaneously one of the 5 Pentarchs and in Orthodoxy. So, like, the Pope is a usurper who basically took control of a huge swath of the Christian faith, but the Orthodox Church was so dedicated to their pentarchy, they're so dedicated to the pentarchy concept that they still include the Bishop of Rome, who basically did a coup to install himself as king, as one of the 5 pentarchs. So, like, the Pope is also the Bishop of Rome, and Rome is one of the pentarchy positions to this day. It's wild. I think that's wild. I think it's very interesting. I think, like, I personally find religion absolutely fascinating. As someone who's been an atheist my entire life, there's never been a point where I believed in any deities. Arguably, there was a point there where I was doing a little bit of self-deification. But, like, as someone who is an atheist and has always been an atheist, like, religion is such a fascinating topic because it is, like, it's just like video game lore, right? Like, it's the same thing, only a lot of it is real. Like, the Pentarchy is a real thing. Like, the Catholic Church is a real thing, right? I don't have to believe in their God to know that for them to be, like, a real, you know, institution in the world. And, like, the things that have happened in history are, like, I think, like, super interesting. I think that, like, the dynamics of, like, you know, like, weird esoteric shit, like, what does the word Protestant mean? Right? Like, that's actually a really interesting question. And, like, why is Protestantism different from Catholicism? Like, mechanically. It's, like, you know, as someone who does deep dives into mechanics on this channel a lot, like, it's stuff that I find like, intrinsically very interesting. And I hope that people, for the most part, can enjoy it for what it is. I do understand that most people are probably a lot more surrounded by, like, religion than I am. Like, you know, there's no religious monopoly in Singapore. There's too many religions here, and it's illegal to proselytize. You cannot go door to door proselytizing your religion. You're not going to. You will occasionally get Jehovah's Witnesses because they just are gluttons for punishment. The entire religion here is actually illegal, for a variety of complex reasons. But Jehovah's Witnesses are, like, the only religion that's banned in Singapore. And I think a good portion of it is that even though the religion is literally banned here, they'll still go door to door proselytizing to people, which is some truly crazy shit, because that's also illegal. You can't go door to door proselytizing to people in this country. You know, let's just say there were some problems back in the 70s and the 80s. And, well, it's not that there aren't any no Jehovah's Witnesses. It's that, you know, the religion's illegal, but they're still here. But there's just not as many of them. And the less dedicated, like, you know, there's no one more dedicated to evangelizing than the Jehovah's Witnesses. Like, there's just nobody's more dedicated to evangelism than them. So, like, there's no comparison. So anybody else is just going to be like, okay, yes, it's illegal to proselytize. Yes, I'm not going to go wander around proselytizing to, you know, door to door or whatever. So I don't ever have to worry about that. Also, it's not. Anyway, it's a whole thing. But the dynamics. So for me, it's very much a thing that I'm looking at from afar, as opposed to, like, a thing that I have to deal with in my day-to-day life. So where are you? I'm trying to figure out. Is there, like, a teleporter that goes there? Maybe is that what I'm forgetting about? Let's activate this. Yeah, I mean, that's a normal thing to me. I mean, the Bible says that you can't sit in a chair that a woman on her period's been sitting on. Again, like, it's not going to get more weird than what I expect. The no mirrors thing very much sounds like a vanity thing, which is one of the sins, right? It's one of the cardinal sins, right? I'm pretty sure vanity is one of the cardinal sins in Christianity. Yeah, I mean, that... Again, it just sounds like normal Christian stuff to me. But, you know, like... And the thing about religious practices is that every single one of them, not every single one of them, many of them are completely batshit, right? And if I had to guess, if there is a mirror abolition, which there may or may not be, if they have an abolition on mirrors, that's almost certainly a vanity thing, right? Vanity is one of the cardinal sins in Christianity, so it just makes sense that, like, they would ban the thing whose purpose is explicitly for vanity, right? And so yeah, I mean, that would check out to me. And I could easily see that being then taken from that point into a more superstitious, or not more superstitious, but more like superstition-coded concept of like soul, like direct soul stealing, as opposed to, well, you don't have an immortal soul if you go to hell, so your soul will be destroyed by mirrors if you are engaging in vanity or whatever, right? Because like the Jehovah's Witnesses, I think, believe that there's like 5 people who are going to heaven or something, so like it's not like it's a very high bar that they're working with to remain in God's good graces. Like that's a thing to bear in mind, is that they think everyone's going to hell. So, but anyway, yeah, I don't find most of that stuff super unusual. A lot of that stuff is actually like a lot of the weird like stuff, like, you know, the pork aversion, right? Which all the Abrahamic religions share. It's just that most Christians ignore it. But Christians aren't allowed to eat pork either. But like the pork aversion and things like that, a lot of that stuff comes from just like good advice, actually, because like pork is not a super safe thing to eat if you're cooking it on an open flame, right? Like it's not good, actually. There's a lot of religious rules are actually just like, oh, this thing is going to hurt/kill our followers, let's tell them they're not allowed to do it. Like the gambling thing, like banning gambling, is a very common like religious construction. It's like, yeah, that makes sense, actually. I think that it makes sense for you to say, oh yeah, it's a sin to throw away all your money and like engage in this behavior that's going to hurt you, right? Well, I mean, that's not that different. The only difference from like the actual canon, if in that capacity, would be the limited lifespan in heaven, right? So, because again, like according to Christian dogma, you are not immortal if you go to hell. If you go to hell, when hell closes shop because heaven wins the war, all the souls in hell cease to exist. Hell is not eternal. The war is not eternal. According to Christian dogma, God is going to win. And when God wins, the souls in hell cease existing. So, considering that the Jehovah's Witnesses think only like 15 people are going to end up in heaven anyway, like, again, this is my understanding, it's actually not that big of a distinction for them to think those 15 people don't have immortal souls versus them thinking that, there. I mean, I think that that's a very unusual, that's a very modern kind of like, that's a very modern heresy, like, to be honest. The idea that, like, you can do whatever you want and you'll end up in heaven anyway, that's not, like, that's not a normal Christian, you know, belief. That's definitely not a thing that almost any churches on the planet are saying, right? Like, there's like, there's plenty of churches that like ascribe to the heresy that hell is eternal. I think.
I can't fit anymore.
I don't know Dante. You think I read Dante? I don't know reading fucking Dante. I should read Dante. It might be fun. I don't know whether Inferno would be like interesting for me. I tried to read like The Picture of Dorian Gray, and I guess I'm just not generally that interested in romance novels, which is kind of what it is, right? But I didn't find The Picture of Dorian Gray that interesting enough to have finished it. I can try it again sometime. I find the concept of The Picture of Dorian Gray very interesting. The concept of this immortal creature. I was actually going to write a book, which, funnily enough, was a romance novel. In the whatchamacallit? I was going to write one with a character who was immortal in kind of the same way that Dorian is. Certainly in pop culture adaptations. I never got far enough in the book to find out what was going on with that picture. Oh, thanks for the gift sub, Not Jail the Viper. Let's see, which circle? Welcome to subscription status. Let me think. Okay, describe for me the circles of hell, and I will pick the one that I want to be in. I'm tempted. I'm tempted to pick the one that is the weird, like, I don't even know what religion it is, but nobody in here is Singaporean. So none of you are going to know the place that I'm talking about, and I don't remember its name, so it wouldn't even make a good joke. But I think only if you go to the circle of hell that has like the magma, because like one of the circles is supposed to be cold. This is, by the way, this is all from Inferno. This is fan fiction shit. Like the circles of hell thing is not part of like Christian canon. This is Dante's fan fiction, for anyone who's not aware of. But I believe there's the cold one. And I don't know. Well, I would say it's part of Christian lore, but not part of Christian canon. I would make that argument. Though a lot of it has been canonized by a lot of the actual a lot of the Protestants. A lot of Protestants like unironically believe in a bunch of the stuff that's in Inferno because it's part of that like Christian shared, cultural space, and they don't realize that it was not actually a part of the religion at any point. So and that holds true for like, priests and stuff as well. So you end up with like churches that have some colorful interpretations of how hell works, because I think almost all depictions of hell are tied fundamentally into Inferno, right? Like, Inferno is basically where the entire modern conception of hell comes from for Christians. Because I don't think it's not fleshed out very much in the Bible itself. It's kind of like the Antichrist, actually, where it's like this modern pop cultural invention. Like, there is Antichrist within the Bible, but Antichrist refers to like heathens more than anything else. Like specifically like the enemies of Christ generally. So like the like Roman government and shit like that. Like that's like that's I believe it's not like a person, it's like a thing. Well, you definitely won't get a waifu. That's you don't get waifus in hell. I can definitely assure you of that. Well, actually, I can't assure you that, because so the Satanists would hold that you have a battle between two conflicting deities, I believe. So you have Satan and Yahweh or whatever. I don't know if the Satanists use Yahweh, but I actually don't know how it's pronounced. But like, however, I think it's something akin to Yahweh. Anyway, so they would contend that you have the battle between the two divines, and that actually the propaganda of Yahweh is wrong, and Yahweh is really bad, actually, and you should not like Yahweh. So, like, when people think of Satanists, I think they typically think of people who are, like, deliberately worshipping the bad. But there's actually, like, a real religious dogma tied in there, and Satanists, I don't know a lot about them, to be clear. I'm not a religious scholar. Shockingly, I am not a religious scholar. Limbo isn't in hell, though. Limbo's not in hell. Let's see. I unfortunately cannot read that. Better not be a slur. I guess it probably would have been blocked otherwise. I have no idea what that is. Let's see. My assumption is something very benign in a language that if I was a religious scholar, I would be able to read. Let's see. But, like, because, like, Limbo is, like... I thought that Limbo was an actual canonical thing. Didn't Limbo get invented by the Catholics? Because... as, like, a way to, like, say, okay, well, your infant who didn't get baptized yet isn't actually in hell? Was it a Dante invention? Because, like, I think Limbo is canon. Like, being a thing that exists is canon, but I don't think it's canon that it's in hell.
I can't fit anymore.
But it's possible that Limbo basically got added to the canon after Dante's Inferno came out, because people said, wait, what about all these babies? So that's a good question, actually. If Limbo is purely a fanfiction creation, I'm gonna be so amused, actually. Like, I actually will be. Which one's the Angel of Death? Michael's War, right? Because they all have all these random titles, but I actually don't know who's who. Oh shit! Okay, we should potentially go somewhere else. I thought this was going to come out somewhere else. Okay, gotcha. So, like, Limbo is... because it got added later, right? Like, it got added at some point. But I don't know the history on when Limbo got added as a concept, because it's not. I don't think Limbo's in the Bible, right? Like, Limbo isn't like a biblical thing. That's something that the Catholics came up with later, I think. You know, as a Christian, I don't think you're going to have to worry too much about that. Unless you're in some very, very specific locations, you're probably going to be fine. Is there another type of Catholic? Is it the whole point of a Catholic that... Because they're not, like... Orthodox aren't Catholics, right? Aren't Catholics specifically the Christians who broke off? Because people call them Orthodox Catholics, but they're not Orthodox Catholics. Aren't they just saying... Are they Orthodox Christians or Orthodox Catholics? I think they're Orthodox Christians, right? I'm actually curious. I don't actually know this for sure. I'm like wondering if that's like actually, if I'm correct in this or not. Because it's my understanding that it's... I am the ultra nerd. I will nerd out on any topic, anytime, anywhere. This isn't even my final form. Just imagine how fucking nerdy I'll be able to be when I'm 80. When I'm 80 years old, it's going to be wild. I'll have so much random information in my head. I'm technically 256, but that's only canonically true. It's not like physically true. That's just canon. It's canon that I'm 256. But in actual meat space, that is not.
There's no room left.
But they're not they're Orthodox though, right? I don't know about Coptics, but like the Byzantium is Orthodox. Like, don't you have to have abolished the Pentarchy to be a Catholic? Oh, there would be other Catholics though, because is it the anti-popes? The Byzantines, I'm pretty sure, like the Russian Orthodox Church, I don't think is a Catholic religion, right? And similarly, the Byzantine, like, Byzantine, like, church was an Orthodox church. But because of the anti-popes. See, no one in chat asked me about anti-popes. So anti-popes are this really cool thing. I was really hoping I'd look at the clock and it would be like 1 o'clock. It's not. So guess what? You get the anti-pope talk. So anti-popes are this really interesting thing where sometimes throughout history, there's been disagreement about who is actually the real pope. And it's kind of random and arbitrary which pope ended up winning. And sometimes, for very long periods of time, you would have entire succession chains of different popes, one of whom would hold Rome, and the other, who wasn't in Rome, would be, I guess you consider canonically, considered the anti-pope. But sometimes the anti-pope would march an army into Rome, or be marched by an army to Rome. I mean, this is like political intrigue between the different like Christian nations. And take over. And when they took over Rome, they would then be the new pope. And they were an anti-pope 2 days earlier. Now, obviously, they always claimed that they were the real pope, right? But from the perspective of, from the perception of their faction, they were always the pope. The pope in Rome was the anti-pope, etc. So are like Coptics an anti-pope situation? I don't actually know anything about Coptics.
No match for me.
I can't carry any.
Because I've also never heard anyone refer to a Coptic as a Catholic. I think I've heard the term Armenian Catholic. Okay. So let's see here. What is... We're to check. Orthodox Church name? The Eastern Orthodox Church is officially called the Orthodox Catholic Church. Is Christian just not a name that existed? Was Catholic just the name for all Christians? Why do they call them Catholics? That's very interesting. I'll have to look into the linguistics of where the term Catholic comes from, because I thought that the Catholics were specifically the people who created popes, but it looks like it might be that Catholic is a term that predates Christian to describe Christians generically. So, wait, so you're telling me that actually, let's roll it back. Protestants are Catholics. Sorry, Protestants are still Catholics. Okay, so if they're letting in the Anglicans, then they're all Catholic faiths. That's what I'm going with. If you let in the filthy English, good luck. Good luck. I mean, it's just history stuff, right? It's history, and it's like a little tiny bit of history, and it's a lot of just God. What is the thing I'm thinking of? What's the word to describe like the creation of sets? I'm trying to think of the word. Someone was using it recently. It's like, how do you define where like a species begins and ends and stuff like that kind of thing? There's a generalization for that category of there's a generalized name for the creation of categories and the categorization of things. I'm trying to think of what it is. No. A cricket told me not to, so I haven't drank anymore. I have been drinking Pepsi. Don't drink water. Dimension 20 is great. Real, like, 10 out of 10 show. Yeah, that's why I'm allowed to drink it. That's why I can drink it. I'm not allowed to drink water. There's a lot of water in Pepsi. And this is Pepsi Zero, so it's like... It's barely flavored. It's mostly just water, caffeine, and a bunch of shit that my body isn't going to be able to process. You know, water. I think caffeine is useful. Mostly the reason that I actually drink soda, like unironically, is I noticed that when I'm not drinking soda, it's actually like a pain in the ass to drink enough. I like drinking water, but I have to drink a lot to maintain. Like, I have a very fast metabolism. I go through a lot of water in a day. And I get really dehydrated really fast if I'm not drinking continuously throughout the day, right? So I need to have something that I'm willing to drink by the liter
I can't fit anymore.
in a fairly short period of time, right? And I'm just not... I'm not going to naturally gravitate to that. With water. One of the convenient things about having just that little bit of caffeine is actually what I'm presuming that this is a component of it. Bear in mind, I'm not entirely certain on this, but I assume that part of the reason that it's so easy for me to remember to like drink regularly is that you start going through withdrawal from caffeine super fast. Caffeine withdrawal is like immediate. So if you're kind of like microdosing on caffeine throughout the day and you're getting a lot of liquid through caffeine sources, you're going to get the urge to drink more like really fast, right? You're going to be remembering to do what you're supposed to be doing. So, oh, did it swap out completely? It swapped out completely. Yeah, I don't really drink alcohol anymore, but my one vice is caffeine. And luckily, most people don't even consider it a vice. So, God, the number of brownie points I got, like, when I came here, and it's like, what does he want to drink? Oh, he doesn't drink. He doesn't drink alcohol. Oh, okay. Does he smoke or anything? No. What, he has no vices? No. Excellent. Excellent. My mother-in-law was very pleased, I hear reports of. And he does laundry? I'm good at brownie points. I get. When the bar is in the ground, it's real easy to get lots of points, you know? Yeah. Yeah, I think that you get brownie points, I think, from any parent for being able to cook. Being able to cook is something that, like, maybe not quite any parent, like, there's probably some, like, you know, very deep in the manosphere, like, dads who'll be like, "What? That's woman's work. You shouldn't be cooking. You got yourself a guy who can cook? Disgusting." Right? Like, I'm sure that there's some people who are like that, but I think that's incredibly uncommon even in those spaces. Yeah, I can imagine that.
Sorry.
I can imagine that.
Sorry.
I can't carry anymore. There's no room. There's no room.
I can't fit anymore.
Probably not too many, though. But maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Ow!
It's not like I know how to cook any... Well, actually, that's not true. I technically do know how to cook chicken teriyaki, but I don't know that that's certainly not local cuisine. That ain't local. Alright, we're gonna go over here. How are we at 99% already? Oh, didn't I just grab this Jeep? Did I switch inventories? I think I did. Yes. I was looking for things. This boss fight hasn't been added, has it? Let me tell you, I've got some opinions on writing systems. I don't have any opinions on writing systems. I know absolutely nothing. It's the kind of thing that you could believe it.
It's of no use to me.
I have very strong opinions about all sorts of random shit that I shouldn't know anything about.
I can't learn that spell.
Let's leave it behind.
Lightning bolts.
That'll be. This is nice.
Let's
I wish I
beacon,
could
we
learn.
can
We don't
never
need
learn.
this.
Jump.
There's no room. Sorry.
We don't need this.
Great.
Let's leave it behind.
It's funny, my dad always told
We
me
don't
when I
need
was a
this.
kid
I can use that.
that if you
Let's
grow
leave
up
it
eating good
behind.
food, you'll eventually
need
learn to
this.
cook because you will
We don't
just
need this. I can't carry any. Let's leave it behind. We don't need
intrinsically... Oh, we got another Arms Master bow for later. Let's go. I'm a little
Sorry.
terrified about
Won't fit.
doing all this
There's no
inventory
room.
tinkering. Yeah, he said a lot of things that didn't age well, but if we're being honest, you know, I grew up eating a lot of tacos and I grew up eating chicken
We don't
teriyaki,
need this.
and you know, eventually I figured out how to make those things
don't
because I
need
wanted
this.
to be able to eat them.
There's no room.
You know,
My pack. I There's can't no carry room. anymore.
it's not entirely untrue.
Useless.
It's just maybe a little oversimplified.
Ooh.
Okay. A little bit oversimplified. But it turns out that it's actually really easy to...
We don't need this.
It's really easy to learn how to cook,
We don't need
like,
this.
fairly simple stuff. The thing that's interesting about cooking is that you can't learn to cook. That's not really a thing. You can learn how to cook a specific thing.
There's no room. My pack's
But
full.
realistically speaking,
There's no room.
everything that you would cook is like a different thing. It's like a whole different
My
deal.
pack's full.
So, like, I don't know how to cook very much. I'm very bad at
Let's leave it
cooking,
behind. It's of no use to
like,
me.
generally.
I can't. There's no
It's a thing that I don't have, like, an innate talent for. I have a very weak sense of taste.
Who needs it?
Like,
Junk. Who
I'm
needs it?
very texture focused with the way that I consume food.
Let's leave it behind.
I
can't carry anymore.
But like I don't have like a very strong like sense of taste. And so
We don't need this.
it's very difficult for me to cook because it's like I don't like certainly cook for other people. Because it's like I don't know. Oh wow, I had like an entire fully empty inventory
Ooh.
to play with. But you know, you just learn how to cook a couple of things. I mean, if you can cook in a crock pot,
Let's leave it behind. Let's leave
if
it
you can
behind.
cook in a crock pot,
We don't need this.
then you know how to cook, and you can cook.
Let's leave it behind. My pack's full.
Sorry.
My pack's full.
Like a crock pot, you can make anything in a freaking crock pot. Like,
Ooh.
that is... like, I can't cook. I just know how to use these 3 different types of cooking instruments that give me a very diverse ability to make whatever I want. Like, between a microwave, a crock pot, and an air fryer, what can't be made with those 3? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So funny. This is how it always is. People are like, oh, well, I don't know how to cook. And then it's like, well, except for all the things that I know how to cook. And then I cook for myself when I feel like it. Many such cases. Okay, I'm going to leave because we should be able to. I don't remember getting the message, but we have to, at some point, just try it and see what happens. Yeah. Well, why would you cook when you don't feel like cooking? I mean, I guess there's some reasons to cook when you don't feel like cooking, but generally speaking, just cook when you want to. I find it very useful to cook in the morning because I stream immediately after I wake up, basically. So it's like very useful. But like,
No match for me.
yeah, I know how to cook, but I don't really enjoy it. I never became capable of cooking in the way that my father would recognize as necessarily similar to his own. Not for lack of trying on several people's part. The number of people who have tried to turn cooking into a special interest of mine, who have tried to be like, okay, well, if we can manipulate the ADHD in a very specific way, we can just, like, channel a hyperfixation for, like, a couple of months into a fascination with cooking. If we can make that happen, then we'll have, like, an amazing chef in the family. And it's never happened. It's never happened. Well, it probably has happened. I would say that's probably how my dad learned to cook. If we're being perfectly honest, I think that at some point he got hyperfixated on it, and so he learned how to do a bunch of cooking things. And then once he had like the baseline stuff, but I still the thing that I think is nice is that I can cook things that no one else like that I know can cook. I mean, they probably could, but they don't like have an interest in cooking then because they don't want them that often. So, like, I'll be cooking something and it's like, oh yes, I am uniquely suited to the task of making these tacos because nobody else is going to make tacos. I'm actually generally in charge of anything that involves, like, ground beef in this house. Which is a lot of things. I can make chili as long as I have a recipe on me. Which I guess is true for all human beings. I mean, I don't know. That feels like very, like, heated language for, like, eating on a couch. I'm not gonna lie. Eating on a couch is very normal people behavior. That's, like, the most normal thing you could do. Other people have in fact eaten on a couch. That's a thing that's happened. That's pretty normal. I am. I'm pulling out all the slurs. All you filthy neurotypicals. Look, normalcy. You have all the typicals. It's all the typicals. Ooh. You know, if you wanted to make a slur out of it, if you wanted to make a slur out of neurotypical, you could start calling it neurotypy. Neurotypy sounds like an illness. You could also call it neurotypathy, which actually rolls off the tongue better, I think. Neurotypathy sounds dangerous. When engaging with these people, you have to be aware that some of them might have neurotypathy. Don't worry. As much as I might fearmonger, just be aware, I don't believe neurotypicals exist. They don't exist and they can't hurt you. They're like ghosts. This is kind of a joke and also kind of not a joke. I don't think we want to farm these elementals. I don't know how often they'll respawn if we just stand here. But we should probably not farm them, right? You seem very self-conscious. Sure, it's all chill. Let's see. I will be honest, I don't like the language spurred out. That sounds like an actual slur. I don't know that it is one, but it does sound like it has the vibe of one. I don't like that. I will say I don't like that. You're fine, but try not to use that in my chat. I look tired. Oh man. Dude, tell the streamers that every day. So funny. Oh man. That was actually really interesting. I don't think that self-directed hate is any more acceptable than hate pointed any other direction. That's my hot take. Like actually, like legitimately, I don't think that it's better when we say nasty things about ourselves than when we say nasty things about others. And that I know does make me a heretic in society, but that is self-hate is the seventh step of them. But let's see here. It's like the expression, like, I don't want you saying that shit about my friend kind of deal, which I think is actually a great line. Like when you've got, you know, friends who have a lot of like negative self-talk. It's like, you know, I don't want to hear people saying that kind of shit about my friend. Is I think like a very effective like encapsulation of like, you know, the I think it's a useful mental tool to have, right? Okay, we are so close. We are so close. Let's see. I know the context of it. Yeah, don't say that shit about my friend. Them's fighting words, right? It's a great line. It's very useful. I don't think I've ever had to use it. No, that's not true. I don't know that I've ever said that line exactly. But the sentiment behind it, I actually have had to express to some people that I know in the past. Because I feel like people... I'm trying to think of what it is. Like, I'm trying to think of where it comes from socially. There's like... I feel like there's an implicit, like... idea that... I think part of it comes down to, like, ownership ideology that like ties into the way that people parent their kids and stuff like that as well, right? Like, you know, if some, you know, oh well, you know, you can't interfere with the way that a parent is going to parent their kids. So like, I don't know, man. I don't feel like people should be abusing each other, and I'm going to say something if they're engaging in abusive behavior. I don't give a shit what their relationship is to this person. There are situations where that's not, you know, super valid, but to a large degree, I think that holds true. But, like, I think that there's an element of that philosophy that comes into play when it comes to people who are, like, cruel to themselves. Where it's like, oh, well, this cruelty gets a pass because they have the right to be cruel to this person, right? It's like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know that cruelty deserves to have a right to be, you know? That's kind of my feeling. I don't know that we need the right to be cruel to anyone. Let's see. So down here we have friends. We got to 100% so early. We're only at 12:59. We're actually doing okay on time. I was worried we were going to be like going 15 minutes over. It is funny. I'm not sure. Was the "you're not tired" thing, or sorry, you look tired thing, specifically a reference to the discourse? Was that deliberate? Because that would be old Discord if that was a reference to that kind of thing. It's friends with sticks to go. Ooh, shit. Oh, well, it's funny, because today I am very not tired. I slept so well. I slept in. I started stream late because I just slept in. My characters are tired. So there's a thing that happens on Twitch, and this is a thing that happens most commonly to women. But like, there's this thing on Twitch where like a lot of like chatters will just like tell people that they look tired, and it's like, it's kind of a weird thing to tell people. Like, unironically, it's kind of like a weird thing to say. And it's really common. So like a lot of people, like people who have like larger communities, who have bigger chats, will end up like hearing that like every day and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, I feel really good about, how, set up I got myself this morning or whatever. And then chat's just like, you look tired. And it's not like a mean thing to say necessarily,
Sorry, it won't fit.
but it like is like,
It's useless.
if you like feel like you look well done up at the moment, it can be, right? So it's just this interesting dynamic. Well, I was really sleep deprived for several days, so maybe that's it, is that I am no longer sleep deprived, and so people think that I look tired. Hard to say. But I feel very energetic right now. I am in a fairly high energy state. I need to figure out where the hell these people are. Are they in the basement again? Is that what it is? It's probably that. They're probably in the basement. Yes. I think I just saw them, right? Yes. Okay, so they're in the basement. They had wandered off somewhere. And I haven't looted all the chests, right? I haven't gotten through all the locked doors. Okay, so... Oh, shit! We haven't... Didn't we already kill the polar bear here in this? Was that... I guess that was the other side. I'm gonna just hope that this polar magyar doesn't kill Oren again. It's mind-boggling how many of these there are here. The fireball trap actually did less damage than I would have expected. So where are you? So I've missed quite a bit of random enemies. I think these are probably, to some degree, enemies that got swapped around. That's what's going on. A lot of this is the swappers swapping into random groups. And then, like, I killed the majority of the group, but not the entire group. It's gonna end very badly if we're not at full HP when we get hit. We're fine there. Poor Oren. How do I get there again? I think I know how to get there. Maybe. I think that is across the way. I'm confused at why I'm at 100%. It's actually making my life a little harder because getting to 100% this quickly made it very easy for me to miss quite a few things that were happening. Luckily, I know that there aren't any thingers right there. Also, do we have a key? Shouldn't we have a key to the teleporter door or something? Like, I feel like we should have a key. How do I get to there? This is a dead end. Like, I at some point got in there. And I have no idea how I got there. It's not here. It is an elemental. Okay. Going down here. It's not through the teleporter, I don't think. This is the door that we can't open. Okay, I didn't come to this side of this, I think. How do I open you? I guess it doesn't matter, because I can always just jump back up. Okay, we've now been on both sides of this. Let's pop over here. Do we go straight? No, this is a hole. Do we go to the front? Ah, there's an alcove here. Okay. So this is going to have a thing? So they're all over here. Take that out. Oh, we killed these from the other side. Okay. That explains so much. That explains so much. Let's see.
Sorry.
I can't carry anymore.
Let's see. There are still more enemies left. This is madness. I did it 100% for so long. We're 8 minutes up over time. I thought we were going to be getting done on time. So this opens a door. That's so funny. We've been like right next to this thing on so many occasions. So many occasions. So did we open the room, the teleporter room now? Or did we just open this door here? Or did we open both? So where does this go? Okay. I want to finish the zone before we leave. So this is the bottom floor of the Coliseum area. Get that done. And I think it said that the door's locked. I don't think that it said it was. Is there another key? Or am I just on the wrong inventory? Okay, so I was on the wrong inventory. This key does both of them. And we can loot this chest. I think this is the last
We don't
one.
need
This is
Let's leave
a
it behind.
Sorry.
artifact of some sort. Slap this on.
I can't carry anymore.
Sorry. It won't fit.
My pets, there's no room.
See
I can't
here.
fit anymore. There's no room.
Okay. And let's just use the teleport. I don't remember where it goes. We'll find out. Okay, goes to here. So, we have 11 levels? Oh my god, look how much we got in that one dungeon. We got 5 levels out of that. Okay, cool beans. So, we finished up the thinger there. How much do we have left? We have another thing to do in Might Magic 8. We could probably do the Dragon Cave if we want. Do we want to do the Dragon Cave? Let's do a map maybe for 8. I don't know. We'll figure it out tomorrow. No, we won't. It's Friday, isn't it? We'll figure that out on Monday. So that is going to be it for today. Thank you for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure to stream for you today. I hope people have found random esoteric conversation about the... Is it epistemology? Is it epistemology? Wait, we're not ending yet. Is it epistemology? Epistemology. It is not epistemology. Maybe? It might be epistemology, but I don't think it's epistemology. It's related to epistemology. I don't think it's epistemology that I'm thinking of specifically. At any rate, just random talks about all sorts of random things. I had a good time. Hope everyone else did as well. And next time we will be going to Might Magic 8 and doing something, and who knows what random nonsense we'll be talking about then. Later, folks.